Morning, Johan, and morning to everyone that's tuning into our live broadcast on Facebook, our very first live. Welcome, Johan.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all the listeners and participants. Thank you for inviting me.
Great morning, Johan. And what I think was we were actually scheduled to talk a bit later this morning and discuss a few things as to how the changes was. But last night we were informed that even like the news I watched last night, the news was old news and they changed regulations quite late last night regarding moving and tenants. So I thought we will just quickly change it around a bit and just chat about what's the newest things and what is happening. So Johan, what we discussed was what happens if my tenants move in level 4, and that was different for what we were going to discuss later today and now, and how it changed. Can you just inform us what happened?
Yeah. Amore, yes, like I said previously in a bit of a jokish way, I said that, you know, we have to have these webinars each and every day. It seems to me that the regulations and the rules and the do's and don'ts change on a hourly, if not daily basis. Yes. Up to yesterday, the 7th of May, we basically had a prohibition against tenants moving from one premises to the other, you know. So the practical principle was that if your specific rental agreement lapsed due to effluxion of time, or the parties cancelled the rental agreement, and the parties needed to move, it was just not possible because you had to stay in the premises. But we had a published government gazette, and I'm going to provide the listeners with the government gazette number, because if you Google the government gazette number, it will directly take you to the relevant government gazette. And the relevance of it is that there is a specific permit form attached to that government gazette if you are one of the affected parties that need to move in this lockdown period, and you entitled in terms of the regulations to move, you need to take this specific permit to the relevant police station. But let's just give you some reference. Government Gazette number 43293. I repeat, it's 43293, and it has been published on the 7th of May 2020. So if you just basically slot in Government Gazette 43293, then it will take you to the relevant page and you can have a look at the Government Gazette itself. The long and short of it is that it basically facilitates movement of persons, and I'm quoting directly out of the Government Gazette, and goods within, across provincial, metropolitan or district boundaries during level 4. But obviously, like very Mark, it has terms and conditions, you know. It basically says that it only involves movement of persons and goods where new lease agreements were entered into before or during the lockdown period. So to qualify that, it seems that it will involve new lease agreements as well as lease agreements entered into prior to lockdown, in terms of which movement and occupation is now required. And we will see there is a relevant specific date period in terms of which this move has to be facilitated. So it's not an open-ended movement period. It's obviously a restricted movement. Secondly, where movement is necessitated where transfer of an immovable property occurred prior to lockdown. So it does seem that if we would, with the deeds office anticipated to open round about Monday, we really hope that it's going to happen. When it happens and we would register properties now, it doesn't seem as if those moves will be facilitated by means of this specific government gazette, because it clearly states that the transfer of the property had to take place prior to lockdown into your name. So it's only those specific people who are landlocked, literally, due to registrations that took place prior to. In comparison, or in contrast to that, it seems that your lease agreements would be those that have been entered into prior, as well as those during the lockdown period. Now, if the move is necessitated in this specific paragraph, you are granted between 7 May, being the date that this government gazette was published, until the 7th of June to facilitate the relevant move. So, you know, we are only spoken for up to the 7th of June. We anticipate that they will probably revisit that date and then extend it, but for the here and the now, it's only limited to the 7th of June. Now, the question is how do you facilitate this authority? Now, we probably won't see it, but I mean, this form is Form 1 that is attached to the Government Gazette, and it is necessary that you take this form to the station commander of a police station or the person designated by him or her. Now, it doesn't say which police station, but I can imagine that it's probably the police station closest to you if it is a trans-provincial move, and if it is in a specific provincial area or even in the same city that you are moving, I would imagine that it would be the police station where the relevant property is situated in question. But you've got to take this permit to the relevant officer or station commander. He would then help you complete it and give it an official stamp. But there are documents you need to take along with you. And those documents would obviously be the old rental agreement and the new rental agreement, which basically collaborates the necessity for the move. And if it is a registration that took place prior to lockdown, I would advise that you contact the relevant conveyancer that did the registration to provide you with a conveyancing certificate saying that registration had taken place prior to the 26th of March and that you are currently still landlocked. And you can even take a copy of the offer to purchase in terms of which the transfer had taken place. So that in a nutshell, basically effective from yesterday. And like I said, it would provide you, if you comply with these specific requirements, it would comply you, or it would entitle you to obviously proceed with the move until the 7th of June.
Yes, and I want to just emphasize, today is 8th May, Friday, 8th May. So if you see this later on, just remember that these things are changing the whole time. So we try to keep up and make this video so that you are informed, but if it changed later, then just remember to go and visit my Facebook page, check if it is updated and where we are currently standing. So, Johan, and I think that is one of the things that we are sometimes frustrated with, is the fact that this is ever changing, but this is not a, I want to emphasize it again, not a South African based thing only. This is a worldwide thing. And I've seen it all over that this is changing all the time. So even countries like any other country from right around the world have the same issue where the things are changing rapidly and the governments try to just make plans, and at this stage, no one knows really what is the right way to do. So it will change and it will change again. So my next question to you would be, can I use the once-off movement that was announced the 1st of May, the once-off movement between the provinces? Can I use that now?
Well, unfortunately not. The once-off movement has basically lapsed, or that specific right to move from your then place of residence during lockdown basically lapsed at midnight last night. So that was basically aimed at domestic workers and workers who need to obviously report for work based on the level 4 exemptions that came into effect on the 4th of March. That was to facilitate their specific move back to their places of residence to enable them to commence work again. So I think that is long gone in its past. You know, this is a brand new right to move, and it's specifically aimed at people who need to move to a new place of residence based to or due to circumstances like rental agreements that were entered into and like the registrations that took place prior to the lockdown. So one should not confuse those two specific rights to move. The one has basically did its due, and I think it's redundant now because most of the workers who had to start with work under level 4 on the 1st of May, which was specific holiday, and so practically on the 4th of May, that has already passed and they've already used that specific period.
Then my next question to you would just be, and it's something flowing out of this, is can estate agents now presume their normal duties and work from their either offices or home offices?
Well, you know, like a lot of legislation, unfortunately, they did not take all specific circumstances and domino effects into account. So the answer to that, unfortunately, is no. It still remains a situation that estate agents are not part of the lockdown regulations under level 4, so they have not been exempt, which is a pity, because I believe they play the most integral part of the specific property transaction, whether it be a rental or whether it be a sale. But no, it's not permissible. And to link up to your question in that regard, it obviously poses one of the most important questions that estate agents have, is that, for instance, where parties, due to the effluxion of time in a rental agreement, have to vacate the premises, the question is who's going to deal with the outgoing inspection? Because the outgoing inspection is normally something that, on behalf of the lessor and the lessee in a combined circumstance, is done by the letting agent, which is an estate agent. So in this instance, outgoing inspections can still not be conducted by the estate agent, and you either have to do it by means of a virtual inspection, which is very difficult, as we know, because they don't necessarily have the facilities to do that, or alternative, if it's an ingoing inspection in the light of a new premises, you know, it practically means that the lessor and lessee, or predominantly the lessee, who's got the right to move into the property, would, based on the incoming inspection sheet, would have to conduct the incoming inspection. You know, and I don't know whether that would suffice, but, you know, obviously to make shift and try and to accommodate the parties, this would be the only way that you can facilitate an ingoing inspection. Otherwise, you know, we are still stuck with the ingoing and outgoing inspection, that it would have to be postponed until such time as the lockdown entitles a specific estate agent to become involved, and then the specific ingoing inspection would have to be done, bearing in mind that your specific tenant has already then moved into the property for quite a considerable undetermined period of time. So it would be very difficult to determine what defects there are in the property, and which would probably you know, occurred during that occupational period that the lessee occupied the premises.
And I think this is very important, because there's a lot of news going around saying that you can actually just go ahead and do what you want, but this is not the case. I think what we all need to remember is this is not, this is a national disaster. We have to listen to the rules, and we have to make sure that we follow them. Otherwise, we will have great repercussions. So what I want to ask you also is, what happens to my tenant's deposit if the tenant moves out of this property?
Well, I think if you bear in mind the specific prescriptive way in which a deposit has to be dealt with contractually wise, and which is impossible at this current stage, because strictly speaking, what happens is, on the mutual inspection being conducted, everybody being happy that there isn't additional damage to the property, then there's a statutory responsibility on the lessor to release that relevant deposit. But let's face the reality, that deposit is in trust with the estate agency or agent, who cannot be a party to the specific outgoing inspection. You know, so it's very difficult to combine the three parties if one of the parties, or even two of the parties, can't be party to the inspection. So in the event where the inspection cannot, for practical purpose, be conducted, we still have the proposal that the deposit, unfortunately, has to be kept and remain in trust until such time as the official inspection can be finalized, all parties be happy, and then the deposit can be released. If there is a possibility that the inspection can be conducted between the parties, I'm talking about lessor and lessee, you know, it would be necessary that the obligation that the estate agent has, or the letting agent has, with regards to the release of the deposit be waived or amended. You know, so I mean, to put it bluntly, the estate agent would have to be exonerated for purposes of any liability in terms of it. So if the lessor and the lessee decides we're happy with the lease, the letting premises, and there isn't any additional damage, then an addendum can easily be drafted to say, listen, we're going to waive this condition and we're going to authorize the estate agent to release the deposit, irrespective of the fact that he was packet and parcel or not of the inspection itself. So it's one or two options. Either it remains in trust until such time as a proper inspection can be done mutually between all parties, or alternatively, the estate agent can be released from his liability by means of an addendum to the rental agreement, and the deposit can then be released to the lessee if there isn't any further damage.
Yes, and I think this is unprecedented time. So we all are just figuring out what is the correct way to do it. So stay inside your contract and make sure that you follow the contract to the T, and draw up the addendums as is. And I think I just want to summarize by saying that you said this is only valid for 7 May and 7 to 7 June.
Correct.
So this will then also have an influence if my property registers in this time, seeing that the deeds office was supposed to open this week for May, but they might only open now 8 May. So when they have done all the cleaning of their facilities and sanitizing it, then they'll open. So that means if a transaction is registered in this time, the client can move.
Well, no, it unfortunately does not. The principle is that if you read the relevant government gazette, it only makes provision for those two instances. Firstly, where a lease agreement has been entered into prior to lockdown or during lockdown. So with regards to the lease, if your lease agreement necessitates a move prior to the 7th of June, you can move. So the lease agreements are covered in both ways, prior and during lockdown. But unfortunately, if you have a look at Section 2A2 of the relevant government gazette, it only makes provision for transfers of immovable property that occurred prior to lockdown. So it does not include those registrations which we will be able to do during the lockdown period and as a result of the deeds office opening. Like you said, we anticipate and we really hope that the deeds office will be opening this coming Monday on the 11th, but it's not official yet. We have received a media release from the registrar itself, that is Karlies Knudsen, and she basically circulated a media release saying that the sanitizing and the procurement of all the necessary equipment is in an advanced stage, and that they will make a media release as to the reopening of the deeds office shortly. And that was published yesterday as well. So we anticipate that it would be a couple of days, and then the deeds office hopefully will open. And the problem that we have is the deeds office will open under the lockdown level 4 regulations, which will obviously, in my humble opinion, mean that a third of the workforce will be back in action, and that would obviously be a type of a skeleton staff. So we cannot expect that it will be a full-blown operation. They will gradually phase it in. So we hope that it will be up and running and that we can register as soon as possible. But the long and the short of it is that we still have that occupational problem as soon as the deeds office opens and we register, because it doesn't seem that those moves are covered in this government gazette after registration. I do believe they will adapt the government gazette and they will issue a new one, because that is a physical problem that needs to be addressed. They seem to come with an answer as soon as it really becomes a teething question. Hopefully that will happen as soon as the deeds office opens.
And I think that we also have to remember they have to take the correct steps and measures to make sure that everyone is safe, because the last thing all of us, estate agents, attorneys, everyone involved in this whole process want is a deeds office opening and someone having COVID in there, and then after a week or two, this whole thing is shut down, and then we're back to level 5. And I think that is important to know. And I think as the registration of properties after Monday, 11 May, will happen, there will also be, like you said, teething problems, but then another set of rules might come out. So I want to say, watch this space. We will definitely do one of these videos again and see what answers we can give you more, and answers that you can just convey back to your buyers and sellers that are also very concerned about this matter.
Definitely, we will keep you posted as to new regulations that see the light. Like I said, this was literally posted yesterday and published yesterday, so we will keep you abreast as to the latest developments. And like I said, they are definitely going to evolve as we go around. If the regulations with regards to the classifications and the lockdown levels change, there will be additional government gazettes that would be issued to fine-tune certain regulations and domino effects that obviously are caused due to these specific changes. So we will keep you abreast, definitely.
Yes, and I think all of this is evolving, and hopefully we as estate agents can start work as soon as possible. I think we are all just ready to go out and serve our clients and be of value to them. So Johan, thank you for your time this morning, and thank you for assisting us in answering some of these issues. We'll definitely have a follow-up again, like we did from the past, the previous one. We'll have another follow-up just to answer questions that come from this video as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for it. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Johan.
Bye-bye.